today in El Chalten. Yesterday was a travel day. You can see behind us Mount Fitzroy. El Chalten is a small town. It only has 600 people, and that's during the summer season. There's no cell phone service. There's no bank. There's no ATM. A few of the stores take credit cards, but they'll give you a 10% discount if you pay in cash. We've had a quick walk through the city. Pizza seems to be the national food. If you don't like pizza, you should not come to El Chalten. Hiking though is really good, very good I should say. Mount Fitzroy behind us was named for Captain Fitzroy, who was the captain of the Beagle. The Beagle was a ship that came around Cape Horn in about 1834. We've only been on the trail a little while, but we've already had to stop and take off our outer garments. It was rather chilly when we started this morning, but the sun's warmed things up quickly, and you don't want to sweat too much on the trail. You need to have garments that will do what they call wicking away your sweat, because later on when you slow down you don't want to get chilled. So George is putting his pack back on. We're going to continue on. I'm just going to give a quick panning shot though and show you that we are above the river Fitzroy. This comes down from that tall mountain that we first described in the opening sequence. I suspect we'll be hiking along it pretty soon on our way to the lake. We just came around a corner of the trail, and here's what we found. In the upper right of your screen you see Mount Fitzroy, about 11,000 feet high. To the left you see a number of jagged needle-like points. That's Cerro Los Torres. We're on our way to Laguna Torres, or Lake Torres in English. So we're going to continue on, but I just had to show you this beautiful sight as we're hiking here, just right outside of El Chalten in Patagonia, which of course is in Argentina. We've been on the trail now for about an hour and a half, and we've gone about 2¼ miles. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's been all uphill. We're currently on what's called a saddle. That's a low spot between two higher mountains, and we're about to start down the other side. We've still got about another 4 miles to go. You can see in the background the Cerro Torres, which are those mountain peaks. To the right and slightly out of the camera, of course, is Fitzroy, so we're still in the same area. We're headed for Laguna Torre, which is Lake Torre. I feel like singing Willie Nelson's On the Road again. We're making good time now. We're in one of the meadows. You can still see Cerro de Torres in front of us. We're headed towards Lake Torre. Please stay with us. You can hear the sound of the river off to the right of your screen. That's Cerro Torre directly ahead. We're only about a mile away from Laguna Torre, so let's keep walking. Well, it's a bit of a moonscape that we're starting down. Awful rocky. This is left by a glacier many centuries ago, perhaps thousands of years ago. We're walking our way through it to get back into the forest. We're almost at the end of our hike. What you see below you is the River Fitzroy, named after that captain of the ship of the Beagle. He actually never made it to this river, but the 11,000-foot spire that's behind us bears his name, and so does this river. Just a few more minutes and we're back in the little town of El Chalten. Well, that completes our hike to Laguna Torre. What you see below you is the little town of El Chalten. Only 600 people, no cell phone service, no ATMs, no banks, but plenty of pizzas. The next 2 days are travel days for us. We have to go back to El Calafate and then from there to Puerto Natales. So you'll rejoin us when we get to Puerto Natales. That's where we'll start a real hike in Patagonia. These last 2 days have just been enormous. So this is Steve Izant for Top. Entrepreneurs come in all sizes and shapes in Argentina. And here you might say is a classic example of a small businessman. You can get bebes fritas, cold drinks, cigarrillos, cigarettes, helados, ice cream, pan casero, that's bread. You can get batteries, snacks, and souvenirs. Looks like he's not open right now. This is a travel day between El Calafate and Puerto Natales. I had not planned to shoot any film, but I came outside this morning and saw this kind of sky. And when you see something like this, you just have to film it. So even though this is just a very brief segment between where we've been and where we're going, just had to show it to you. It does mean we may have some rain later today, but one doesn't often see clouds like this. I'm Steve Izant. Our next stop, Puerto Natales, which is actually in Chile. We're going to be leaving Argentina on our way to Chile to begin our trek in Patagonia. Please stay with us. Before we can start our hike, we're going to have to take that catamaran that's coming in to pick us up. It's about an hour's trip, I believe, down the lake. That will take us to our first place, Torres del Paine, the Refugio. Refugio, if you translate it literally, means refuge, but it's where we'll spend the night, and then the next day we'll hike to the next one. Please stay with us. This is our first morning on the trail. We are in the national park, Torre del Paine. We stayed at a refugio called Grand Pine, or perhaps Grand Pine. Unfortunately, this area of the national park has recently been devastated by a forest fire. Even though, as you look around, you'll say, well, there isn't much to burn. There actually is. There's a lot of scrub growth, a lot of small bushes. As my trusted friend and traveling companion George pans around a little bit, you can see some of the devastation behind me. And in the distance, you can see one of the first mountains now. I'd love to tell you that we're going to climb to the top of that mountain, but we're not. We're going to go around to the side. We have about a 10-kilometer hike this morning. It's going to take us several hours, all uphill. Of course, on the way back, we get to go all downhill. So please stay with us. We're going to go out on the trail. We're going to take you with us. Well, this wouldn't be an adventure if we didn't have some kind of wildlife on the show. These look like llamas, but they're not. They're actually close cousins to the llama. As you can see, we're in, unfortunately, kind of a burned out area. But these folks seem to be a little, not necessarily on the friendly side, but at least they're not afraid of me. They see some green grass, they're a little hungry. So that's what they're doing. So these are not llamas, but they are close cousins. I don't think, of course, I'm going to go up and pet one. I'll just be content to watch them from here. We're taking our first little rest break. As you can see, we're still in the fire area. This poor tree behind me is just literally charcoal. It hasn't fallen over yet. Behind us is the mountain. I think this is about the highest point. We're going to start down now to get out of the wind. So that would happen all the way down here at the tip of South America. So we're finally down out of that wind and down into the trees. So this is good. It's normal walking again. Naturally, every one of you have seen a stream, but this one's so photogenic that I just couldn't help stop and film it and this little bridge that we had to cross. We're still about an hour away from the next refugio, and we understand from there's a great viewpoint of the glacier that we showed you earlier in the show. So please stay with us. We're on our way to the refugio to get a good look at that glacier. Well, sometimes you take a little bit of a risk. That's not the most wonderful looking bridge that I've ever seen. This is the Rio Olgan. But we have to cross that bridge to get to the other side and to get to the refugio where we'll finally be able to have lunch. We've been on the trail now for about 4 hours. Seen lots of ups and downs, as you've seen earlier in the show. One heck of a lot of wind when we were higher up. It's not too bad right now, but we're going to have to go back that same way. But meanwhile, stay with me while I take a walk across that good-looking bridge. Well, we've been on the trail for about 4 hours now. You can see the glacier ahead of us, and then the refugio, or literally translated, place of refuge. That's where we're going to stop and have lunch, and I think that's probably all the farther we're going to go today. I'd hoped to be able to take you all the way up there to the glacier, but we have to make it back to where we started before it gets dark. And you don't want to be on this trail when there's no night lights. So we're going to continue on, have lunch, and then start back. But that's the glacier. This is Steve Izant, your glacier tour guide. Well, it's another morning. We're off for our second day of trekking. Winds today are supposed to be up to 40 miles an hour. We're already feeling that. My partner George is holding the camera. He's asked me to make this short because he wants to get going and get warm. We're headed to a place called French Valley today. It's a totally different area that we're going to hike. And then Los Cuernos is our refugio for tonight. So I'm going to make this short. We're going to start out on our hike. Please stay with us because George is getting cold. Go. We're about an hour and a half into our trek. In that last segment, of course, you saw that it was pretty windy. Outside temperature was probably around 45 degrees, and with that wind, the wind chill may be somewhere down in the 30s. But we were down safe behind the mountain, not a lot of wind. You can see this is another fire-damaged area. The trees behind me here that my partner George is panning to show you here, devastation. Doesn't look like that they're going to rejuvenate. So unfortunately, this part of the forest is lost for quite a few years. We're continuing on to French Valley, so please stay with us. Well, we're almost to the split where we go one way up to French Valley and the other over to the Italian camp. We're going to have to make that decision pretty quick. Meanwhile, here comes my hiking partner George across the bridge. This one's a little more stable than the last one we went across. I'm going to pan slowly up to the right to take a look at a glacier. We're not going to be hiking that glacier, but we may come close to the foot of it. Coming up next, well, I heard a chuckle behind me there. Well, we might come close, who knows. But we're coming up to the split where we have to make the decision. Do we go to French Valley or to the Italian camp? Please stay with us to find out which direction we choose. Well, just when we thought we were safely across the river, here's a second bridge. The sign says only 2 people at a time on the bridge. I think we're just going to let George go first to see if he makes it all the way across. So far, so good. I think he's going to make it, so I'm going to start out next. I'm going to stop in the middle, though, and show you what this river looks like. Well, I don't know the name of this river. It's probably on the map, but I'm glad we have this bridge to get across, because I'd hate to try and ford, stepping from rock to rock. Up there you can see still the same glacier. That's the way to French Valley. Coming up next, our decision on to go to French Valley or the Italian camp. Well, we're at the moment of truth. We have to make a decision. Are we going to go to Refugio Cuernos? That's where we're staying tonight. If we go there right now, it's about 2.5 hours away. Hot showers, a warm meal, possibly beer, wine, or...
Sounds like you're going there.
Do we go to French Valley? The wind, 70 kilometers, about 40 knots, no trees, snow, big rocks. Which way are we going to go? Are we going to suffer? Our friends over here are urging us to, which way do you want us to go?
Oh, you got to go to the valley.
They have to go to the valley. All right, so they're voting for the valley. We may not do, that's the middle leg of the W. We may not do the entire leg, but at least we're going to go 100 feet that way, and then we can say we've been to the French Valley. So now up out of the tree line, we are in French Valley. You can see behind us the mountain with the glacier. A little bit of a dirty glacier, but it's still a glacier nonetheless. The wind speed, temperature's dropping. We think it's probably prudent to turn around and head for our next stop. For a hot meal, warm shower, maybe even a glass of red wine. So that's a lot further. Go here, we will, when you see us, we'll be in Refugio Cuernos. Well, we're hoping that we're only about an hour away from our Los Cuernos, which is where we're going to stay tonight. George has just made a successful passage across the little mountain stream. I'm going to slowly pan around so that you can see up to a nice waterfall. Certainly not as big as something like Bridal Veil Falls in Yosemite, but that's still pretty impressive. So we're about an hour away. We're hiking at the foot of this mountain here. A little rain earlier, a lot of wind. That's kind of died down now, so we're hoping to make it to Los Cuervos without too much more trouble. Please stay with us. Well, this is the end of our second day of hiking. We're about halfway through our trail. We've got about another day and a half to go. It's a long lake with a Scandinavian sounding name to my right that I can't pronounce. In the background, you see the mountain that is right at the head of French Valley that we were at earlier today. The wind's died down, so things are a lot nicer. This particular refugio, Los Cuernos, it has heat. Our last one didn't, so that's a big plus. It also has hot showers, which is another big plus. So we're going to go inside. I'm going to show you what the inside looks like, and then after that I'm going to turn off the camera, because if you have small children watching, they're probably saying, "Mommy, that guy has hat hair." And it's true, I have hat hair. So I'm going to take a shower and fix myself up. But first, let's go inside and see what a typical refugio looks like. By now some of you are thinking, what does the inside of a refugio, that's where we're staying, look like? So this is a typical one. What you see directly ahead of you is a stove, which is for heat. It's most welcome because the last one, because of the fire, did not have any power. So it was pretty cold, and we didn't have much in the way of lights either. They turned on a generator only from about 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock. So here you can see people that are checking in. A few folks have already bought themselves a beer. A lot of people are waiting until dinner time. You can buy dinner right there. They'll serve it to you. And we've got a couple of folks over here that are playing an intense game of chess. We're now looking at the other side of the main room. As you can see, it has some glass windows, a dramatic view of the mountain out there in the distance. French Valley is also at the foot of that mountain. That was the mountain that had a lot of wind earlier today. The wind's died down, so things are going to be pretty good tonight. Since we've got heat. And we're looking forward to a warm shower. Stay with it. At this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, where did they sleep in that refugio? Well, this is a typical refugio room. They're going to put 4 people in this room. The lighting is not too good, so I may not be able to show you all 4 bunks, but you see one to your right and one to the left. And now as I pan up, there's the next bunk. And if you're good at climbing a ladder, there's bunk number 4. But if it's a choice of a bunk up there or being outside where the temperature is going to drop probably down into the high 30s or low 40s, I think I'd probably take that top bunk. Fortunately, my partner George and I got here early enough that he has the bed on the left and I have the one on the right. We're about to start day number 3 on our trek. We are headed for perhaps our longest trek today. Last night it rained like crazy. Hopefully behind me you can see a rainbow that's formed. Still a little bit of mist. And if my traveling companion George will pan up just a little bit, you can see some fresh snow on the top of the mountains. Go there, we're going to go around them. So please stay with us as we continue our trek here in the mountains. All right, this is our first bridge. We've not even been 5 minutes out of camp, and we've got to cross this rickety old bridge. This is the stream that we've got to cross. Ice cold mountain water. But things are looking up. You can see sunshine is coming. So better days are ahead. We're moving forward to Las Torres, our next refugio. So we've been on the trail about 2 hours now. We've come to yet another mountain stream. You see my friend George in the distance working his way over. Carefully, George, careful. Looks like he's made it. I'm next. The weather now is just gorgeous. The rain clouds have gone away. We've actually taken off a lot of our outer layers that were going to keep us dry and keep us warm. We're still on our way to Los Torres. We haven't come to the turnoff yet. Going to pan up just a little bit to show you we're still hiking along the face of this fairly tall mountain. But as you can see, it's blue skies with just puffy white clouds. Well, we have to make a decision. Here's where we're going, Chileno. We could go that way, but that's about 3 hours. We can go this way. It's 2 hours, but we've seen some people coming down and they tell us it's all uphill. So being for gluttons for punishment, we're going to take the shorter way, going uphill. We've just arrived at Refugio Chileno. You can see it in the background. This is the second to the last night that we're going to be here on the trail. Tomorrow we're going to go up and see how close we can get to a glacier. I've been telling you that we're on a glacier tour and we're going to try and finally get you. So we're going to go inside a moment. I'll show you what a typical refugio looks like, but in the moment just behind me there are some Argentine gauchos, as their cowboys are called. They're loading some horses. So we're going to take a look at those horses next, and then we're going to go inside. This is Steve Izant. Well, you can still hear the wind. It's quite windy, but here we have some genuine Argentine gauchos. Everything has to be carried in, and now we know how they do it, by horse. So this poor horse is just standing there looking like, what the heck's going on? You can see that they have some gas that they are going to carry out. I assume those are empties. I think what's in those circular things is trash. But if we look at our one gentleman's boot down there, we'll see that he has a knife that he's wearing in that boot. So we have some genuine gauchos here at Refugio Chileno. In the background, you see a number of tents. Rather than staying in the Refugio itself, you can rent those tents. You can still come in and have a meal, but you're there in the tent. It's a little more chilly. Well, George and I are inside our little room at our Refugio, Los Torres. I don't know if you can hear the wind outside, but if you can see the trees, you can see it's still quite strong. It's been that way almost all day. Hopefully it will die down tomorrow, because we're on our way to visit the glacier. Well, this is the inside of Refugio Los Torres. It's a little less formal than Los Serenos, the one that we were at last night. But it's still kind of friendly. It's warm. Behind me are the windows letting the sun in. We can see my hiking partner and friend George sitting there. There's no internet, there's no Wi-Fi access, so he writes a great blog, but now he has to write it all on paper, and when we get back to Puerto Natales, then he'll have an internet connection and he can catch up the rest of the world on what we've been doing. But right now, he has to use a pen and paper. Seems a little archaic, but he's doing the best he can. Well, this is day number 4. We're headed to that mountain you see behind us. It's way in the trees. We figure that will slow the wind down, but eventually we'll be out of the trees and into the rocks. And once that happens, so please stay with us. We're on a hike to see the glacier. We reached our first river crossing. Again, rather a flimsy bridge, so I'm making George go first, just in case. The wind here in the gully is not too bad. It's only when we get above the tree line that we really have to worry about it. Meanwhile, the sky is starting to cloud over. It's looking rather ominous. Hoping, of course, that it doesn't start raining. But we're continuing on to find that elusive glacier. We're still quite a ways away from our destination, but there's a magnificent waterfall that's coming down the other side of the valley. You can see, if you look closely, that the wind is strong enough that it's actually blowing the water off into this cloud. So we're still on our way for our glacier hunt. Please stay with us. The bridges keep getting smaller and smaller. This is the flimsiest one perhaps that we've seen so far, but there could be more up ahead, so you better stay tuned to see how small of a bridge we can go across without falling in. Alright, we've been hunting for the smallest bridge, and I think this qualifies. We're down out of the wind. You can still hear it in the trees above us. We're heading down to our final camp. We've got some severe exposure coming up, just a couple of minutes, so please stay with us so you can see us battle the winds as we make our way to camp. Alright, well, we're at that decision point where we have to make a choice on whether to go a little further or to turn back. The weather appears to be getting worse, so we're going to be a little prudent and say this is as far as we're going to go. You can see the mountain in the background, awfully steep. Our final tonight, which is called the talk while we're doing this, but we're going to turn around and head back. Well, I was thinking that I wasn't going to show you any more bridges. How many bridges do you really need to see? But this one's so narrow and thin that I just couldn't resist getting into the program. So turn the camera off in order to be able to walk across, because I do need to hold on to that rail. We're still on a fairly narrow portion of the trail. I just wanted to show you how wide it is, and if you make a mistake, it's a long slide down to the bottom. So we are now we're heading to Cerro Los Torres. I don't know if you can see it in the background, but it has some silver reflective roofs. Meanwhile, there's a young man up there that horse unfortunately stepped on his foot, so we've been told if we don't see a horse coming up the trail to come carry him out, that we should tell Los Torres Central that they need to send the horse. So fortunately we've avoided those kinds of accidents. We're off the mountain, and that's a good thing. See you at Los Torres. Last bridge, just because of the way that it bounces up and down or undulates. We're only just a few minutes away from Central Los Torres, which we're looking forward to. This stream that you see behind you is the one that we've been following all the way down. So come on with us, we're going to Central Los Torres. Well, we finally made it to Torres Central. This is the end of our 5-day trek. We've done what they call the W. We're here at our last refugio. We've had showers. I've changed into my Anderson Cooper t-shirt. Anderson, if you have one missing, I'm sorry, I've got it, but I don't think I'm going to have the same kind of career. So we're getting ready tomorrow to go back to Puerto Natales. We're going to spend a day in that city, and then from there up to El Calafate, and from there to Buenos Aires, and then home. So we're going to wrap up the show.